They say every quiet neighborhood has its secrets. Ours just prefers to dress them in freshly mowed lawns and HOA rule books thicker than the Bible. I live in a tidy little cul-de-sac on the edge of a planned suburban community. One of those neighborhoods where every house looks like it came out of the same real estate catalog. Gray shutters, pastel siding, American flags. Picture perfect. But beneath all that beige and politeness lives something much uglier. Control. And nothing embodies that better than our HOA, or more specifically, the woman who's made it her life's mission to police every inch of it. Karen. Yes, that's actually her name. I wish I were making that up. Before I get ahead of myself, let me tell you about me. I'm a single parent just trying to keep my head above water. I work 2 jobs. One remote gig I juggle during the day and a second shift at the hospital where I do admin work most nights. I'm raising my teenage daughter, Emma, who uses a wheelchair after a car accident 2 years ago. She's tough as nails, smarter than I'll ever be, and just trying to get through high school without too many sideways stares or pitying glances. We're a team, Emma and me. Just trying to live our lives in peace. But peace isn't something Karen allows. From the moment we moved in, she zeroed in on us like we were a threat to her carefully curated HOA utopia. At first, it was little things. Notes in our mailbox. About our trash bins being left out too long, or my Jeep not being aesthetically harmonious with the neighborhood. Then she moved on to more passive-aggressive tactics. Comments during HOA meetings about some residents not keeping their hedges trimmed, or how standards must be maintained if we want to preserve property values. She never says my name. She doesn't have to. Everyone knows who she's talking about. Karen's the type who hosts wine socials and sends out event flyers with RSVP deadlines like she's running a gala. Her lawn is a perfectly manicured shrine to HOA-approved landscaping. And God help you if your Christmas lights go up before December 1st. She treats the HOA charter like scripture, and herself like the high priestess of order. It was only a matter of time before she turned her laser focus onto my driveway. It started with a neighborly chat. "Hey, just so you know," she said one afternoon, her voice syrupy sweet. "We have a lot of guests coming over next weekend, and your driveway is the most accessible from the main road. It would be really helpful if you could maybe, move your Jeep to the curb so we can use it for overflow." I blinked. Her. "You want me to move my car so your guest can park in my driveway?" She laughed like I was the one being unreasonable. "Oh, it's just for a few hours, don't be difficult." That was the first sign. From there, it escalated in whispers. More parties, more late-night noise, guests blocking my mailbox, footprints in my flower bed. Emma's ramp partially blocked. All brushed off with the same smirk and a "lighten up, it's just one night." But I saw it for what it was. A test, a game of dominance. And Karen? She doesn't like losing. I had a feeling this wasn't going to end with a few petty notes and awkward sidewalk run-ins. No, Karen was just getting warmed up. The way she watched my house. The way she lingered outside during her morning walks. This was a woman used to getting her way, and I'd just given her the first no she wasn't prepared to hear. Something told me I'd regret it. But I also knew one thing for certain. She'd regret it more. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind where the sun feels like it's daring you to relax. Emma and I had just finished setting up in the backyard with a couple of cold drinks and her sketch pad. She was drawing birds again. She's got this way of capturing life with her pencil that makes you stop and look a little longer. For a minute, everything was quiet, peaceful. Then came the music. That signature high-pitched trill of laughter, the clinking of wine glasses, and the unmistakable warble of someone who's had one too many white wine spritzers trying to sing. Karaoke to Dancing Queen. Karen was throwing another one of her infamous HOA cocktail parties. Now, to be clear, I've got nothing against a good time, but Karen's parties weren't about celebration. They were about spectacle. Every detail screamed, "Look how perfect my life is." And every guest was a mirror for her to admire herself in. The problem wasn't the noise or even the crowd. The problem was what always followed. The assumption that everyone else should rearrange their lives to accommodate her ego. It didn't take long before she came storming over in her pastel pantsuit and 2 high heels, holding a clipboard like she was organizing the Oscars. "Hi there," she said, all breathy smiles. "I was just wondering if you could move your Jeep. We're running out of parking and your driveway is just so much more convenient for our guests." I didn't even look up from my drink. "It's my driveway." "Well, yes," she said, her tone tightening. "But it's just sitting there. And the curb in front of your house is open. And that's public parking. My driveway is private property." She blinked like I'd just spoken in another language. "You're seriously not going to move it?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm not." The mask slipped for a second, just long enough for the tight smile to drop and reveal the irritation underneath. Then, without another word, she spun on her heel and stomped back across the lawn, nearly twisting her ankle in those ridiculous shoes. Emma snorted. She looked like she was about to burst a blood vessel. "I'm giving it an hour," I said, "before she leaves a note." It took 45 minutes. When I went to check the mail later, there it was, folded neatly, and tucked under the wiper of my Jeep, like some kind of HOA parking citation. White stationery, floral border, printed with a font that tried really hard to be friendly. "We all need to work together as a community. Your continued refusal to cooperate with reasonable neighborhood requests is noted. Please consider being more flexible in the future for the good of everyone." I laughed, out loud, right there in the driveway. Karen really thought she was queen of the cul-de-sac, didn't she? That just because she could bully the rest of the block into painting their fences and trimming their hedges on schedule, I'd fall in line too. But she picked the wrong person. I've fought harder battles than a driveway turf war, and I wasn't about to let her turn my home into guest parking for her personal wine club. I tossed the note in the trash and went back inside. I thought that would be the end of it. But then the trash bin was knocked over the next morning, and the sprinklers accidentally came on while Emma was rolling down the ramp. And the following weekend, someone parked across our driveway, just enough to block us in, just enough to make a point. I could feel it. Karen was escalating, testing how far she could push before I snapped. Thing is, she didn't realize who she was playing with. This wasn't about a Jeep anymore. It was about control, and I wasn't about to give her an inch. The pounding on my front door ripped me, out of sleep like a gunshot. I bolted upright, heart thudding, the kind of confusion that only comes when your brain hasn't caught up with reality. Another knock, louder, faster. "Police, open up." I scrambled out of bed and threw on a hoodie, still half blind from sleep. Emma called out from her room, her voice trembling. "Dad, what's happening?" "Stay in your room, sweetheart," I said, forcing calm into my voice that I didn't feel. "I'll handle it." When I opened the door, the blue and red strobe lights were already dancing across the walls. 2 patrol cars idled at the curb, light bars blazing like we were the scene of some high-stakes drug bust. The whole neighborhood was waking up. Porch lights blinked on one by one like popcorn in a microwave, and standing in front of me, 2 officers, one younger and stern-faced, hand on his belt, the other older with tired eyes and a more relaxed posture. "Sir," the younger one barked, "we received a call about a suspicious vehicle blocking a neighbor's access. Step outside." My heart stopped. I blinked at them, still trying to shake off the fog of sleep. "A vehicle?" I asked, confused. "What?" Then I saw it, Karen, standing smugly on her porch, arms crossed in a robe that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. One of her guests hovered beside her, sipping coffee like this was a morning show and we were the entertainment. It clicked. She'd called the cops on my Jeep, in my own damn driveway. "You have got to be kidding me. I'm gonna need to see ID, registration, and any proof of ownership you can provide for that vehicle," the young officer said, motioning to the Jeep like it was some sketchy stolen ride dumped in the suburbs. "I live here," I said, trying not to raise my voice. "That's my driveway. That's my Jeep. What part of this doesn't make sense?" "Sir, we were called here on a potential trespassing complaint. Please cooperate." I turned, walked to the garage, and grabbed my vehicle registration folder. Then I reached into the living room drawer where I kept a flash drive of doorbell cam footage. Because, HOA life teaches you to document everything. I handed both over to the older officer. He took one look, glanced over at the Jeep, then sighed. This is your property? Do you think I just conveniently parked a registered vehicle with my name and address in this exact spot to, block an imaginary guest at 4 in the morning? The younger cop's jaw clenched. The older one leaned in and said, "Do you mind if we take a quick look at the footage?" "Be my guest." We stepped inside for 5 minutes. I played the timestamp from earlier that night. No movement, no confrontation, just my Jeep, parked in its usual place, motionless as a statue. When they stepped back out, I could feel the shift. The younger one looked irritated, but not at me anymore. The older one walked over to Karen's porch and held up a hand. "Ma'am, do you realize this is a private residence and that the vehicle in question is legally registered to the homeowner?" "Shoo." Karen blinked like this had never occurred to her. Well, yes, but he refuses to be flexible. This is a community, and I had guests." The older cop cut her off. "Ma'am, making a false or exaggerated report to emergency services is a serious offense. We're not dispatching cars at 4 in the morning because you don't like where your neighbor parks on his own property." Karen's face twisted into that sour, pinched expression I'd come to know all too well, the look of someone whose power trip just hit a speed bump. The guests on her porch suddenly found their coffee cups very interesting. "We'll be filing." "This is a warning," the older cop said. "Another call like this, and you might be cited for misuse of emergency services." They left a few minutes later, offering a half-hearted apology as they drove off. The lights faded. The neighborhood slowly returned to its artificial peace, but the damage was done. Emma was wide awake, eyes puffy, pacing in the hallway. "I thought someone broke in," she said. "I couldn't breathe." I wrapped her in a hug, her whole body trembling. "I'm sorry, kiddo. That wasn't supposed to happen." I stood at the window after she fell back asleep, staring at Karen's house. This wasn't just annoying anymore. This was war. And now? Now I was ready to fight back. I didn't say anything the next morning. No angry emails. No passive-aggressive signs. No screaming match on the front lawn. I just waved to Karen from my porch, calm as a lake, while sipping my coffee. That smug look she gave me. She thought she'd won. Thought she'd scared me into compliance. She had no idea she'd just, poked the wrong bear. See, I don't fight fire with fire. I fight it with documentation, silence, and a slow burn plan that makes you wish you'd never picked the fight in the first place. By noon that day, I'd already pulled up the HOA bylaws from our neighborhood portal. All 87 pages of it. Dry as toast. But to me, it read like a strategy manual, and my eyes scanned every paragraph, every regulation with one purpose: find Karen's violations. Expose her using the rules she hides behind. It wasn't hard. Her gaudy seasonal decorations, unapproved by HOA standards. That tacky inflatable turkey from November was 3 feet taller than the permitted height. Her landscaping. Technically, non-compliant. She replaced her front yard grass with synthetic turf last spring. No HOA approval for that either. Her backyard parties, multiple noise ordinance violations past 10 p.m. I even found a post on the neighborhood app from an older couple 2 doors down who complained about her DJ setup blasting Pitbull at midnight on a Tuesday. That was just day 1 of the research. Doc 2. I started talking to people. Quietly, casually, nothing dramatic. Old Mr. Simons, who walks his dog past my house every morning, told me Karen once reported his mailbox color to the HOA board. Marissa, 2 houses down, said Karen sent her a formal letter because her Halloween wreath had satanic overtones. She showed me the letter. It was signed Karen L., HOA social chair, like she ran the whole block. Turns out she didn't. She wasn't even an official board member, just a loudmouth who ran events and clung to the illusion of power like it was oxygen. But here's the kicker. I found out from a neighbor named Lucas, an ex-board member with a grudge, that Karen was already on probation with the HOA. Apparently, she got into a shouting match during last year's 4th of July planning meeting. Something about demanding all fireworks be funneled through her property. It turned into a screaming match that ended with 3 formal complaints filed against her. One more strike? She could be suspended from any HOA-related duties for a full year. That's all I needed to hear. I started a dossier. Yeah, an actual folder. Printed copies of everything. Screenshots, bylaws, timestamps, photo evidence, even clips from my doorbell cam of her violating noise rules. I labeled it neatly, Karen, evidence package. Every time I added to it, I smiled, because Karen had no idea what was coming. She'd woken me up at 4 a.m. with cops and flashing lights. Now I was going to wake her up, slowly, surgically, and legally. Not with yelling, not with drama, just a little paperwork, and a whole lot of quiet revenge. The day I walked into the HOA meeting, I made sure to dress sharp. Not flashy, just clean, confident, controlled. I wanted Karen to see me and realize she was no longer dealing with the neighbor who waved politely and stayed quiet. I walked into that stuffy little clubhouse room with a manila envelope tucked under my arm, labeled Formal HOA Complaints, Karen L. The room was filled with the usual faces, some bored, some annoyed to be there, and a few, like me, ready to drop a bomb. And then there was Karen. She was already mid-sentence when she saw me, leaning over the refreshments table, holding court like she always did, talking about organizing another block-wide beautification weekend. When her eyes landed on me, her smile didn't fade, but it froze. I saw the flicker of panic underneath. "Why, hello," she said, almost confused. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Oh, I've been meaning to get more involved in the community," I said casually. Thought this would be a good place to start. I sat near the front. When the floor opened for community comments, I stood up and approached the mic. I'd like to submit a series of formal complaints regarding repeated violations of HOA policies by one Karen L. I opened the folder slowly, deliberately, and handed a copy of the complaint packet to each board member. Inside, 3 videos of her parties going well past the 10 p.m. noise limit, a photo of her unapproved Halloween display, complete with blinking lights and animatronic skeletons, a dated notice of her installing artificial turf without prior approval, and a written testimony from Mr. Simons about her threatening to report his mailbox design. The room went quiet. Karen's face flushed, but she tried to play it off. "This is a misunderstanding. He's clearly retaliating because I had to call the police about his vehicle." About that," I said, flipping to the final page. "I've also included documentation of that night. The Jeep in question was parked entirely on private property, my property. Here's the registration, time-stamped security footage, and a statement from the responding officers." I could feel the mood shift. People were paying attention now. A couple of heads nodded. Even the board president, a stern woman who rarely broke expression, raised an eyebrow. "And for the record," I continued, "Karen has no official authority within the HOA. Her repeated claims of representing the board are misleading at best and manipulative at worst." One of the board members, Lucas, spoke up. "We've received other complaints recently. It might be time we look at her conduct more seriously." Karen's jaw clenched. "I've been doing this for years," she snapped. "I organize events. Keep the block clean and abuse your role to harass your neighbors," Marissa said from the back. "You tried to fine me for a garden gnome." Another neighbor chimed in. "She told my wife we couldn't park our truck in our own driveway during the holidays." It's about time someone spoke up. The board president leaned forward. "Karen will be reviewing these complaints and voting on disciplinary action at the next meeting. In the meantime, your role in neighborhood events is suspended pending review." Boom. Just like that, the control she clung to cracked. Her lips twitched like she wanted to argue. But the room had turned. The eyes that once looked to her with deference now stared with doubt. I didn't stop there. The next morning, I walked into the local precinct and filed a non-emergency report. I provided the case number from the 911 dispatch, the doorbell footage, and a statement describing how Karen knowingly called the police under false pretenses. The officer I spoke to nodded as I explained. False reports, even non-criminal ones, waste resources. If this happens again, we can escalate. That's all I needed to hear, I said. That night, Karen's porch lights stayed off. For the first time in months, the block felt quiet, but I wasn't done. This was just checkmate in progress. For someone who loved control, Karen sure lost. Fast. After the HOA meeting, she went radio silent for a few days. No porch chats, no passive-aggressive texts to the neighborhood thread. Not even her usual daily strut down the sidewalk like she owned every square inch. But then she started retaliating, just not in the way you'd expect from someone who had just been legally and publicly cornered. She went petty. Notes began appearing in my mailbox. Handwritten, unsigned, and clearly meant to appear neighborly, but reeking of her perfume and bitterness. Friendly reminder to keep your lawn edged neatly. Curb appeal is community pride. Some people forget this isn't a used car lot. Side-eye glares whenever I stepped outside. Rumors started trickling down through other neighbors. She told Marissa you were under investigation for insurance fraud, one neighbor said. Claimed your Jeep was illegally modified. Another whispered it was laughable. Sad, really. But while she threw paper punches, the HOA sent actual paperwork. First came the official warning for the noise violations, along with a $100 fine for her unapproved synthetic lawn. Then the notice about her illegal 4th of July patio extension, a construction project she'd bragged about last summer, now under review by the city thanks to an anonymous tip. When the city inspector showed up with a clipboard and measuring tape, I was outside watering my plants. We locked eyes for a moment. She knew it was me, but she couldn't prove it. Her once bustling house became a ghost zone. No guests, no wine nights, no parties. Her holiday bunting remained boxed up for the first time in 5 years. She was radioactive now. Even her clique, the HOA social committee cronies, distanced themselves. I heard one of them had resigned altogether, said it was no longer a healthy environment. And then came the day it all collapsed. It was a bright Saturday morning. I was cleaning out my garage when I heard the shouting. High-pitched, shrill, unmistakably Karen. I stepped out just in time to see a flatbed tow truck parked at the curb in front of her house. Her car, a brand new white Lexus, was halfway onto the lift. She was losing it, screaming at the driver, waving papers, phone in one hand, other hand flailing in full meltdown mode. You idiots! This is a mistake. I park here every day. I know. Everyone on the HOA, do you know who I am? Apparently, the tow was ordered for a different vehicle, a real illegal parker down the street. But when the driver got confused by vague house numbers and called dispatch, someone told him, Karen's of house? Oh yeah, tow it. Oops. By the time it was resolved, 3 neighbors were already filming from their porches. One of the videos landed on the local neighborhood Facebook group under the caption, HOA Queen Goes Nuclear Over Her Own Rules. Within hours, it had over 120 comments. Some were people laughing, others tagging friends, a few saying things like, "This is why I moved out of that neighborhood," or finally someone caught her being herself. It was over for her. Not officially, maybe. But socially, Karen was finished. She could keep handing out notes and pretending she still mattered, but no one was listening anymore. The queen bee had been dethroned. And me? I was just getting started on my next project. Converting that garage into a home gym. Already approved by the HOA, of course. The next HOA meeting felt different. There was a buzz in the air, an unspoken anticipation, as chairs filled up faster than usual, people murmuring behind coffee cups and folded arms. No one said it out loud, but we all knew what was coming. Karen arrived late. No clipboard, no fake pearls, no welcome neighbors, smile. She looked smaller somehow, still trying to carry herself like the queen bee, but the stinger was long gone. Her usual posse wasn't there. Just her, sitting in the back corner pretending not to care. When the board president tapped the mic and cleared her throat, the room went quiet. Before we begin tonight's agenda, she said, we have one item of disciplinary action to formally address. Karen shifted in her seat. It was all read into record, monotone, by the book. The false 911 call, the noise violations, unauthorized property modifications, abuse of power, community disruption, a pattern of behavior. When the board voted, unanimous, Karen's face froze in that same expression I'd seen once when she tripped over her own sprinkler and pretended it hadn't happened. Effective immediately, the board president said, Karen L. is removed from her role as social committee chair. She will not be permitted to attend HOA meetings or events for 6 months. Any future misuse of emergency services will be referred to local authorities for prosecution. Karen tried to speak, tried to launch into a last-ditch speech about toxic neighbors and how she had only ever tried to uphold standards, but no one was buying it. She gestured toward me, tried to accuse me of harassment, of staging some kind of vendetta. The board president cut her off. All your claims were reviewed. No evidence supported them. Please sit down. That silence, it wasn't awkward, it was glorious. After the meeting, people came up to me quietly. Firm handshakes, pats on the shoulder, nods of approval. One neighbor, the sweet older lady who used to scurry past Karen's yard like it was radioactive, handed me a tin of homemade cookies. For standing up to her, she said with a warm smile. We've all been waiting. Back. At home, my daughter finally slept soundly. No 4 a.m. sirens. No more whispered warnings about what Karen might do next. Just silence, peace. I looked out my window before bed and saw her driveway. Empty, no Lexus, no wine-fueled socialite stumbling out at 2 a.m. Just one porch light flickering like a bad memory. She wasn't gone, but she was done. And I had my home back. It's strange how silence can feel like victory. The neighborhood feels different now. Lighter, calmer, like the air itself exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Lawns are still trimmed, kids still ride their bikes, dogs still bark at squirrels, but the tension? Gone. My Jeep sits exactly where it belongs, right in my driveway. No notes, no complaints, no 4 a.m. drama. Just me, my home, and peace. For good measure, I installed a motion sensor spotlight above the garage, not because I expect trouble anymore, but because it makes a satisfying click every time someone tiptoes too close. It caught Karen once, just a brief flash, her silhouette peeking from behind her blinds, one hand holding the curtain like she wanted to say something. But couldn't, wouldn't. She knows better now. There's no more whispering, no more sabotage disguised as community spirit. She walks fast when she passes my house, doesn't make eye contact. The queen bee turned ghost. And me? I'm not angry anymore, because this wasn't about revenge in the explosive movie montage kind of way. It wasn't about shouting matches or slashing tires. It was about drawing a line and saying, no more. It was about restoring the quiet dignity of living in your own home without being bullied into compliance. It was about showing my kid, my family, that we don't have to shrink ourselves for the sake of someone else's comfort. Now, every time I step outside, coffee in hand, and see that Jeep gleaming in the morning sun, it makes me smile. Because to most people, it's just a car. But to me, it's a symbol of patience, of boundaries, of standing tall when someone tries to cut you down. Karen tried to make my driveway a battleground. She turned it into her hill, to die on. Now, it's my flagpole. And the flag, it's parked on 4 wheels right where it's supposed to be.